Okay, on to Chapter 5, Planning. Now, the planning section consists of 4 primary units, and that's the resource unit, the situation unit, the documentation unit, and the demobilization unit. And we'll go into each one of these in this chapter. Now, technical specialists may play a critical role in effective incident management, and they may be assigned to any component of the ICS structure. And we'll talk about how the subject matter experts are kind of act as a liaison within the planning section to help figure things out. So other things we're going to talk about. With the planning section, there's 5 main phases that you need to understand, and again we'll go into. And the first is understanding the situation, establishing the objectives and strategies, developing the plan, and preparing and disseminating the plan, and then evaluating and revising the plan. So the planning section really is the record keeper, if you will, for the entire incident. And to me, it's one of the most crucial components of the incident management process. Of course, as you may or may not know, if you didn't write it down in terms of government, it didn't happen. So let's dive into this chapter and figure this out together. Okay, so the planning section is a critical component of the ICS and provides a unique challenge to individuals who enjoy a more strategic view of incident management while still working in a more detailed-oriented area. The basis of an effective planning section is accurately and timely information from your incident commander and your unified command, as well as from the operation folks. And then the planning folks put all this together and disseminate the information out to all the parties. So the primary units, again, the planning section, are your resources, your situation, your documentation, demobilization, and technical specialist. The planning section is responsible for collecting, evaluating, and disseminating the incident situation information and intelligence. They also prepare status reports, display situational information, and maintain the status of all available resources on scene. They're also tasked with developing and documenting the incident action plan based on guidelines from the incident commander as well as the unified command. Unified planning involves the use of 2 or more planners from different agencies or jurisdictions functioning in a coordinating planning environment. Major instances may require planning expertise from different entities such as public works, utilities, transportation, or public health agencies. So, like we have the concept of unified command, where you have, say, the police chief, fire chief, sheriff, elected officials all coming up with objectives. In the planning section, you may have key members of each of those organizations coming together to help organize and disseminate the information. Now, the person in charge of the planning section is the planning section chief. And their responsibilities include the following: overseeing all incident-related data, gathering and analysis regarding incident operations and assigned resources, developing alternatives for tactical operations, conducting the planning meetings, and preparing the incident action plan for each operational period. It is important for the planning section chief to stay in constant contact with the incident commanders and the operations section. Now remember, the operations section are the people that are actually doing whatever task needs to be done. And in this phase, the incident commanders are sitting at the top of the pyramid saying, hey, this is what we want to get done. The operations folks say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And then the planning folks kind of bridge the gap between the two and saying, okay, this is what you have to carry it out, and this is kind of who's doing what. So they're kind of the coordinating body amongst everybody. Now, the technical complexity of this task assigned to the planning section can be very daunting. So it's very important that you have effective communication and good team members that make it up and understand the process as a whole. And make sure that they get all the facts and figures in. And again, they relay and make sure that we're all operating under the same premise. So now let's look at the resource unit. Now, the resource unit ensures that all assigned personnel and resources have been checked in at the incident. Physical resources include such things as personnel, team, facilities, supplies, and major items of equipment. For the resource unit to effectively manage employee resources, each resource must be categorized by capability and capacity across disciplines and tracked continuously as to their status. Assigned resources are personnel or teams that have checked in, or in the case of equipment facilities, have been received. Available resources are personnel, teams, equipment, or facilities that have been assigned to an incident and are ready for specific work, details, or functions. And out of service resources are personnel, teams, and equipment or facilities that have been assigned to an incident but are unable to function. So essentially, these guys are the people who, okay, we've requested these resources. The resources show up from outside agencies. They check them in. They ensure their capabilities, how many personnel. They look at such things as equipment hours, mileage, and things of that nature, because ultimately the incident itself is responsible for paying so much per unit, per hour, per person, that kind of thing. So that's kind of one reason why they check them in such great detail. And of course, you need to have accountability and know who's there and who's not. So once they get checked in, then those resources are now available for deployment. Now, depending on what's going on with the incident, they may put them in staging, saying, okay, hold here, we'll give you your assignment momentarily. Or they may put them at the base and say, okay, you guys, rest up. Your, first work assignment or operational period will be tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. or whatever the case may be. And then, after they get assigned, of course, the planning section knows who's doing what, because that's all listed in that incident action plan, specifically in the 201 form, if I'm not mistaken. And they keep a list, an accountability board list, where they track every single resource, and they say whether they're working or they're out of service or they're waiting to be assigned. So they take that resource list and they get with the operations folks, and that's how they basically come up with the assignments on who's doing what. And there's actually a form 215A, if I'm not mistaken, that tracks all of those resources that they use. Okay, another group that you may have, and remember, all these positions or sections may or may not be staffed depending on the size of the incident, but the functions still need to take place. So the next group is the situation unit, and since the planning section is kind of the ones that need to know the who, what, when, where, why, and how, this is where the situation unit comes in. They basically collect, process, and organize ongoing situational information. They prepare summaries, they develop projections and forecasts of future events, and they form the current operational picture for the planning section chief. They also prepare maps and gather and disseminate information and intelligence for use in the incident action plan. So these are kind of like your fact finders. They look at the incident and say, okay, the fire was, wildfire was this big this day, now it's this big this day, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. Then you have your documentation unit, and this is where the rubber meets the road. And these are the folks that actually make sure that everything's written down. They provide duplicate services to the incident personnel. They take all the files, they maintain and store all the legal information, the analytical history. Um, these are, for lack of a better term, your paperwork shufflers. You know, they make sure everything's right, written down, and they have records and files and such readily available because, again, you need to have a paper trail if you're ever going to get any kind of federal reimbursement. Now, once you have these resources that come in, traditionally they're assigned to these large-scale instances, usually for about a week, and then you also have, you know, a day to get there and a day to get home. And whether you're traveling to or fro from an incident, it's up to that incident to make sure that you have what you need. So once these units or equipment or people get done with, whether they're done with their service or they're no longer needed or whatever the case may be, they need to be sent home. So in order to send these people home, you have a group known as the Demobilization Unit that develops a plan to get these folks home, such as, okay, here's your, you know, money for fuel, here's a card, here's a PO, here's your XYZ, you know, whatever the case may be. And they handle that entire aspect of the incident of getting those resources back where they need to go. Now, when they get ready to leave, they check such things as, did they have all their equipment? Did anything get damaged? Because if it does, it has to be replaced by the incident. And then, of course, when they're checking them out, they look at those hours, because again, each hour or mile that piece of equipment or machinery was used, the incident itself is responsible for providing compensation to whoever sent it. Okay, so another group that you may have, the technical specialists. Now, the technical specialists are critical to the planning section, especially during the development of the tactical objectives in the incident action plan. Now, the tactical objectives are actual, you know, what specific things are you going to do? So these folks contribute specialized skill to the incident management effort. Technical units are frequently used in hazardous material instances, disease epidemics, or hostage-type situations. The incident dictates the type and number of the technical specialists you may have. So examples of specialists you may have can be meteorologist, environmental specialist, explosive specialist, structural engineering specialist, medical intelligence, pharmaceutical, vets, ag, you name it. So whatever disaster that is going on, the odds are, whether you're police, fire, EMS, or government official, you know, you do not have the requisite knowledge to answer those detailed questions. And these are your subject matter experts, so hence name technical specialists. So they kind of fill in the blanks for you so you can coordinate and get out the appropriate information as needed and make that big picture as a whole so everybody understands what's going on. Now, we've talked a lot about, you know, again, painting that picture and getting the information out in the form of the incident action plan. So let's take a minute and look at the planning process and how the IAP, Incident Action Plan, fits into this. Now, an effective and timely planning process provides the foundation for the effective domestic incident management. The planning process should provide a snapshot that accurately describes the incident situation and resource status, predictions of the probable course of events, as well as alternative strategies to achieve critical incident objectives, and a realistic incident action plan for the next operational period. The IAP must provide clear strategic direction and include a comprehensive listing of the tactical objectives, resources, reserves, and support required to accomplish each strategic incident objectives. During the initial stages of the incident management, Planners must develop a simple plan that is communicated through concise oral briefings. So let's look at the planning process phases, and we'll go into in a whole nother chapter on the incident action plan. So this kind of looks at again that whole planning P that we briefly looked at earlier. So the planning process phase. First, understand the situation. And this is done by, of course, gathering records, analyzing and displaying situation and resource information in a manner that will ensure a clear picture of the magnitude, complexity, and potential impact of the incident and the ability to determine the resources required to develop and implement the effective incident action plan. Also, you have to establish your incident objectives and strategies, and this is basically formulating and prioritizing incident objectives and identifying an appropriate strategy. Again, who identifies the objectives or come up with the incident objectives, and those are your unified command or your incident commander. Also, when you're looking at your objectives, you must evaluate and prioritize your objectives as okay and the appropriate strategies that you're going to use to meet those objectives. And this is kind of one of those again, let's get with the operation folks, let's get with the incident commanders and hash this out. So that's kind of how the planning process is going on right now in that planning P. Everybody is getting together and meeting. Now, once they hash out the objectives, then everybody goes back to their corners, and they're going to start developing their plan. So, you know, the operation folks are getting with planning, saying, okay, this is what we want to do, this is what we're going to need, and the planning says, okay, well, I understand that, but this is the only equipment that you have. This is all we can get you, so forth and so on. Then they kind of go back and forth and hash it out, and they come up with a plan saying, okay, this is the equipment we have, this is what we want to do, and this is going to be the people who do it, or the units that are going to do it. And then once that occurs, they're going to begin to prepare and disseminate that plan. And again, that's done in the form of that incident action plan being a written document in your larger scale incidences. Now, you know, you take a step back, and if it's a new incident, meaning in the first phases, then the odds are that incident action plan is going to be oral in nature, not written, and that's okay. Now, once that happens and it's disseminated, and you know the people are out there doing it, you need to evaluate what's going on, of course, and revise the plan. So during the next operational period, you know, whether or not you need to change things up, or maybe objectives are done and it's time to move on to new objectives. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of the planning process. So in summary, the planning section consists of 4 primary units: resource, situation, documentation, and demobilization. Remember what each section does. You may also have a technical specialist that play a critical role, again, in filling in those blanks that us as first responders may not know. And an effective planning process, of course, is critical in any incident. Now, the NIMS approved planning process consists of the 5 phases, and the 5 phases are, of course, understand the situation, establishing objectives and strategies, develop the plan, disseminate the plan, and then, of course, always evaluate and revise the plan as necessary. Okay, gang, if you haven't already, make sure you read the chapter and go ahead and get cracking on your review questions. If you have any questions, you can reach me in the office at aroberts@athenstech.edu, or you can call me at 706-357-0162. Until next time, be safe and have a wonderful day.